Yes, sir, baby. It's On the Radar Producers, a special episode of On the Radar Producers. Yo, I got my guy calling in from South Florida. Frank El Medico Rodriguez is here with me. What's up, bro?
What is good, man? Happy to be here. Happy to join you. I mean, this is very exciting. What we're doing is very exciting. So let's get at it, bro. Let's get at
Yo,
it. What
yo,
you got?
before we get to all the Red Bull stuff, man, first of all, for the people tuning in, they gotta know that you are a big deal. 6-time Grammy nominated producer, engineer, triple platinum producer, engineer. I don't. There's too many things to go through with your history. So I want for all the producers that are tuning into this interview, anybody who's finding this interview, give me a little brief history about how you got started in this game, leading up to the status that you are currently at right now.
Dude, it was a lot of luck and a lot of preparation. I think luck is when preparation and opportunity like find themselves in a corner. And I my part was to get prepared, and when the opportunities came, I took advantage. But I started in 2002. I went to school. I went to SAE. There's actually an SAE up in New York. I visited a couple of times. I started
dope.
at that school, and mainly because, to be 100% with you, I used to be a travel agent in 2001.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, I went to travel agency school. There was such a thing at once upon
I
a
was
time.
about to say that.
There was such a thing, yeah. Because I just wanted, look, I knew I wanted to travel. And I knew that travel agents and people that do that type of stuff, they get, like, free plane tickets and free, like, comp stuff. So I was like,
I
yo.
ain't mad at you, bro.
No.
Hell yeah.
That was just like, dude, I end up working at an airline. I'll be traveling the world. That's what I wanted to do, really. Like, I love music, but I wanted to do that. But then, and I did the whole thing, and I actually was working in a travel agency. And then 9/11 happened like a month after I started working full time at the travel agency, and obviously the business died.
Shit.
And,
Yep, went to shit.
and whatchamacallit, and then I was out of a job, and then I went through that whole depression of like, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? And I realized, look, if I'm not gonna do that, then I want to do something with music, but I'm not a musician. Like I'm not a trained that, like I didn't see myself on that side of the glass. And then I figured out that there was another side of the glass. And I'm like, holy crap, there's people that like have to record these people and like edit and I mean that was like what I saw a movie, Jackson 5 movie where like Michael Jackson was like with Barry Gordy or somebody, and they were like messing with buttons, and I'm like, holy crap, that thing has like a million buttons. And the thing that really blew my mind was like Michael Jackson goes to like as a little kid, like, hey, so what does that button do? And the guy is like, oh, that's the low frequency, whatever. And I'm like, this dude knows what everything does. What?
Because those
And
boards
then
are
it just
really
blew-
intimidating. Like,
Yeah.
for anybody who's ever been in the studio, like you look at a board and you're like, what the fuck? Like, what?
Yo,
Is this?
for real. Like that's what I saw that. I was like, that and the faders were moving, and I'm like, nobody else sees that the faders are moving by themselves. So I was like, like I was freaking out. So like that stayed in my head, and then it just so happened that SAE was gonna open that January. Like I lost my job in September. So October, November, like December, I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do with my life? And then that school opened in January. And they were like, yo, we're taking in the first class. And I'm like, and I went to see the campus. And dude, nothing was set up. Like they literally had things thrown in rooms. But it was enough for me to be like, yo, this is what I want to do. Like, that's it. This is what I want to do. So I went, obviously, it was at a point that we helped install the school. Like the big SSL that I was blown away by arrived as we were students. So we got to like move it upstairs. We got to put it back together, which was like more eye-opening than if you just learn how to use it, because it's like, holy crap, this is how this gets put together, and this is how it works. This is how it all works together. So it was like a really amazing. I got super lucky. That's what I mean. Like there was a lot of luck. Like my preparation there was getting myself in there, but the fact that nothing was wired and nothing was connected and everything was kind of being put together, and I got to help in that process, helped me like understand my job at that time. And then literally graduated, no idea what to do in the business. Like I graduated knowing how to work this thing, that thing, a computer, whatever, but I didn't know like, okay, what's next? And I got super lucky a bunch of times, because I realized that a lot of people don't understand how these things work. So I'm like, dude, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna help people understand these things, and when they break, I'm gonna help them fix them. So I became a tech. So I started like teching studios out, and as I was doing that, I got an opportunity to work at this one studio in Kendall, like, which is right now we're in Miami. Let's say Kendall is like 15 minutes away from Miami. So there's one studio that's like, yo, our Pro Tools system's not working. And we had 5 people come through and check it out. And I got there and it was like, oh, dude, it's this one thing. Click. And it worked. And he's like, dude, we've had 2 weeks where we couldn't do anything. Nobody could figure out what's the problem. It's like, well, at the time, I was working at the school as a tech. So I'd see these problems every day. And I already knew like, oh, that's this or that's that. So then when he did that, he's like, dude, you got here like a medic and you fixed the problem. And I'm like, oh, there you go. So Frank el Medico was born that day.
Oh, shit. That's hard. Nah, that's hard. That's hard. I like that.
It wasn't like I called myself el Medico. Like literally, they were like, yo, you got here like a Medico and you fixed everything. I'm like, oh, crap. Oh, there it is, dude. Like, that's my
hard,
name.
because I was going to ask, how'd you get that moniker? But I kind of like how it came up so naturally. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a forced thing, you know? Like, it just like somebody said you were like a medic and you're like, yo, I like that.
I like that. That's cool. And I went with that, you know? Like, and then that studio, around that time, there was a guy that used to be in Cultura Profética. And he was working there, and around that time, that's when Calle 13 was like starting to blow up.
Oh shit!
So
okay.
I had the CD, and I was like, "Yo, you ever heard of these guys?" And he's like, "Nah, never," because it was like literally the first CD. Nobody knew who these guys were.
Right.
So I'm like, and he started looking at the credits, like, "Oh shit, Eduardo Cabra, I know this guy. I went to high school with him." I'm like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, we went to high school and music school. Let me hit him up." So he called him up, and it was around that time that Calle 13 was working on their second album, and they wanted to go to a real studio, and these guys didn't know how to use a real studio, but I knew how to use a real studio, so they wrote me along, and I started working the new Calle 13 album, which is the second album, which got nominated and won a bunch of Grammys. Right. I got to work that album with them. That was
very
luck.
Very, very, very. You just like slid that in there. You were like, you know, just it won a couple Grammys, you know, just.
I mean, dude,
whatever.
I've worked on things that I wish had won Grammys that were like, oh my god, this is the most amazing thing I've ever did, and it wasn't even nominated. And then the things that you're like, oh, that was cool. Oh, that gets nominated. Of course it does.
You know what? You want to know what's actually funny? Now that you say it, I feel that's like with my interviews, right? I have really good interviews. Like I'll have really good ones and then really bad ones, right? And then sometimes you just put out the bad ones because it's like, you know, you recorded it, and it's your stuff, so you might as well put it out. And then like I'll like check back in a couple hours, and it'll be like. And somebody will text me like, "Yo, dude, your video has like thousands of views, and it's only been a couple hours." And I'm like, "But I hated that interview."
So that means this one's gonna get like 10 views.
Nah. Don't do that to yourself. Come on, bro. Get out of here with that.
Dude,
but I just think it's a funny thing because like I relate to that because it's just like it's like the stuff that you're just kind of like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, you know, this is cool. And it's just like, all right, whatever. And then you're like, wait, I got nominated for like 3 Grammys for that? What the hell? And then like, it's just it's crazy how life works.
That's exactly how it went, dude. That's exactly how it went. So like, the other thing, the other thing is at the same time I was working on that album, another student of mine, which goes by Hyde. You should interview him too, man. He's amazing. Hyde, El Verdadero Químico.
Okay.
He is currently Wising's personal engineer, and he just mixed Ozuna's new album. He's been mixing for Wisin and Yandel for like
the one that just dropped, right? The one that
he just mixed that album.
Very dope.
And he was my student at the time, like because I started teaching at the school. As I was doing engineering work, I was teaching at the same time. So because you know, like I never felt ready. I was like, no, I need to learn more. And when you teach, you learn more than you teach. Like you learn more from them because the questions that come up are fresh questions that you never thought of yourself, or the ideas that they come up with is like ideas that you never think of because you're thinking like, oh, this is how this works, but they're thinking, I don't know how this works. What if I try this? And you're like, holy crap, that could be amazing. And then, so I was like teaching and doing at the same time. And then Hyde was a student at the time. He was already working, and he was working on En Honor a la Verdad. You remember that album from Vico C?
Yes.
He was working on that album, and he was like working with Echo. This is when I met Echo. He was working with Echo, and he had to take his final exam. The thing is about this school at the time, if you fail your final exam, you fail the whole thing. Like you have to start over from zero.
It's a tough school.
Yeah, it's like it's one and done. If you have to go through the 9 months, and you have to pass the final exam. And he was like, dude, I don't even have time to go take the final exam. And it was like one of those things like, but you're already doing
Yeah, you're already doing it until like fast.
It's like, yeah, but my mom, she wants to see the paper. I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'll go pick you up. Like, get a lunch break. You could do this. This is a 2-hour test. You could do this in an hour. Take a lunch break. Tell them that you're gonna step out. I'll pick you up. The studio was like down the street. I'll bring you. Take the test, and I'll bring you back. Nobody will even know that you're gone. So yeah, it was just like that. He finished the test in like 45 minutes. It was like, and then like I took him back, and he's like, bro, I'm never gonna forget this. Thank you so much. I'm like, hey, don't worry about it, man. Like it would be a waste if you had wasted your whole time here. So then he calls me, 4 months later, as I'm working this Calle 13 album. He calls me and he's like, hey, I'm in town working this new Daddy Yankee album. And I'm like, which was Yankee's second album. And he's like, do you want to help me? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. So I ended up working for a while there. I was working Calle 13 and Daddy Yankee at the same time. Like I would literally leave one session and then go to the other session. And like I would just go back and forth. The thing is that Calle 13 sessions were like 2 weeks, but Daddy Yankee was like 4 months. Wow. So we ended up being in the studio with Raymond and the crew for, dude, it was an eternity. Well, but I learned more from that than anything else. Like I learned so much more than I contributed. I learned from those sessions, you know.
Well, I mean, and you know what, your company and yourself, you know, you have such a long list of names along with, you know, Daddy Yankee and Calle 13. I mean, you have Mark Anthony, you have, you know, Wisin Yandel, you got, you're also working on this Simon Cowell and Ricky Martin show for Univision. Like, it's kind of crazy how far, like, you've come in that time. Who has been, like, some of the favorite, like, your favorite people to, like, work with? Like
Mala Rodriguez, well, hands down. Hands down.
You didn't even let me finish asking it. Oh. Like,
Mala, I mean, dude, it's a long list, and it's hard, it's unfair to say this person, that person. But the thing is about the Mala thing is that she let me produce. She was like one of the first big people that is like, because when she called me, she didn't call me to be like, yo, I need you to engineer my album. She's like, she called me after her break, and she's like, I want to start again, and I want you to help me figure out what my album is going to be. Right. So I was like, holy crap. So, but that was one of those things where like I always wanted to work with her, and we've met a few times and we hung out. We like, there was this whole stint we did in Vegas that was amazing. I can't even talk about it because the things that happened were like insane.
Yo, you know? What happens in Vegas? You just let it go.
Exactly. But that's when we first really met. Like that's when we clicked. Like as like people, not even as coworkers or colleagues. It's as people we clicked, and then we met again in Colombia like a few years later, and she's like, dude, I keep following what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Like, she retired for like 2 years, and when she came back, she's like, I want Frank to help me find the situation. And I'm like, dude, that was perfect. Like, and we shacked up for 2 weeks in an Airbnb in LA, literally listening to beats. Like, just going. We went through like 700 beats. Like, me just calling people, send me beats, send me beats, send me beats. And we went through, and it was amazing because I got to help. Like, I got to like just be more than hands for somebody or just like tweak sounds. It's more like, okay, now I get to produce. Like I get to help her find the sound for her new album and do it. And that was hands down. Again, it's unfair to say that because like I'm working with Camilo Lara right now in Mexico, and we're doing amazing things. Right. Like amazing things with cumbia and like the urban sound that's coming out of Mexico. Mm-hmm. I've worked with Toy Selecta, and we've done amazing things. Like Toy Selecta was the one that linked me up with Diplo and the Matt Decent crew, and I got to work with them. Right. Like, you know, Alice in Wonderland was another one of those projects that for me was like, yo, like she blew my mind. One time we were in the studio. The second time I worked her first album, and that was like she was in Australia, and I was in Miami, and our schedules were flipped. So I would be up from like midnight to like 7 a.m, and she would be like going to sleep like during the day. It was crazy because then sometimes I was awake during the day and she was awake at night. So it was like, okay, what like, but we worked it out, and everything was done through G-Talk. Like we literally did everything. Like she would send me notes through G-Talk, and I would change the mix and send it to her, and then she would listen to it, and like we did that whole first album. But that whole thing was like some dude, some A&R from EMI Australia hit me up. He's like, hey, I'm working with Alice in Wonderland. She wants you to make her album. And I'm like, who is that? Like, who is this person? And then we did that album, and then it comes out, it does well. And then a couple of years later, she hits me up again. And now we're in the studio in LA because they're spending some real money on her. And I was like, as we're working like the fifth song, I'm like, Allison, dude, I got to ask you, man, why me? Like, you hit me up out of the blue, and I don't think I don't appreciate it. But why did you choose me? And she's like, dude, everything that I've ever done, you did it. And I'm like, huh? She's like, don't you remember you worked this album with this one producer that? And I'm like, yeah, but that was my album. And I'm like, what? Like, for real? She's like, yeah, like, and I really like the way it came out. So I'm like, oh, the next album that I'll do it with the same guy. And I'm like, dude, what? So, like, it turned out I was working with her from, like, before I even knew I was working with her, you know, and that,
Right.
I've had, every single project has, like, moments like that where it's just, like, my first Grammy nomination was with my boys from high school, man.
Right.
Like,
So with the Grammys, like, do you because I've interviewed people who have won Grammys who have been a part of projects, but obviously I know, like, to receive an actual, like, trophy, you have to do a certain percentage of the song or the project, whatever gets nominated. The ones that you have won, are they like, do you get the certification or do you get, like, the actual trophy for what you?
the ones that I have done, for most of it, like, the one time that I was gonna get the actual trophy, I missed out by 1%.
No way.
Yeah, because you have to do 51%.
Oh man, I'm
So
sorry.
I missed out on 1%. It was like, and then when I did this Mala album, we were all so sure she was gonna get nominated. Like, oh my god, there's no way she's not gonna get nominated. And I'm like, well, if she gets nominated, I could probably, like, now it's gonna be the time. And then not, she didn't get nominated. I'm like, but it's Mala Rodriguez. All right, whatever.
I know. It's just how things end up working out. So I want to also ask you. So I know you have your own label now, and your label kind of it deals with a lot of different genres. So what can you tell me about what you're working with your label, which is called La Clinica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is perfect. You know, I love the
Perfect.
branding here. Great branding. So what are you doing with your label with I guess the artists you're developing and whatnot?
Well, the whole thing was born because when I was working with Diplo, and I was doing the major laser stuff and all that, like, a lot of kids found out and they started sending me songs, like, to show to Diplo. And I'm like, dude, he's not gonna care. Like, what, are you kidding me, dude? Like, he's got 50 people making beats under him already. Like, you know, like, he gets beats just from the Matt Decent crew. Like, he doesn't need stuff from the outside. That being said, like, I'm looking at Happy Colors, and Happy Colors, like, got in with the crew because he handed over, like, here, take my USB, I got beats there, and people fucking loved it, you know, like, so there's always that chance, you know. But it was that, is people just kept sending me songs, and I'm like, yo, half of these are not bad. Right. Like, these are pretty good. So I was with my boy Milkman in Miami one time, and he's like, and I was telling him, I was like, dude, I'm getting all these songs from all these kids, and I don't know what to do with them. And he's like, well, do a label. And I'm like, what? Nah, dude, that was ridiculous to me. Like, start a label. Like, to me, when you think label, you think Universal, Sony, all this crazy stuff, right? And then he's like, dude, hold up a second. And he called, we have our lawyer, Angie Martinez, who just won, like, lawyer of the year, like, you know, music person of the year, something. And he called her, like, it was 2 a.m. She picks up, like, what's up? It's like, Medic wants a label. And she's like, okay, all right, it's done. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, what do you want to call it? I'm like, La Clinica? And they're like, yeah, that's perfect. A week later, I had a contract.
So how many artists are on your roster? How many people are you working with right now?
Dude, I mean, people that I work directly with all the time, maybe 7. But people that send me tracks and we, like,
millions.
Release it, dude, in the years, we were just going through the catalog and, like, finding things and, like, holy crap, we work with this person. Holy crap, we work with that person. And some of these kids have made it. Like, they've blown up, you know, which was the goal, really, was to find this obscure stuff that's good and kind of help the platform, like, give them a platform to, like, come out. And we've had those guys play at EDC Mexico, like, big stage, EDC Mexico, like, the biggest thing we did is we flew this kid, Chris Major, from Venezuela around the time when it was the worst. I mean, maybe it's the worst now, but at that time it was bad. It was so bad that we had to drive him over the border into Colombia. Mm-hmm. First, we had to get him a passport. That alone was like, holy crap. You know, then we drove him over the border into, I think it was whatever the first city that's right after Venezuela. And then we flew him to Bogota, which was like $30. It was ridiculously cheap. And then we flew him from Bogota into Mexico. And the first time we did it, they deported him.
Oh my God.
yeah, like the first year they deported him back to Colombia because that when he traveled, unfortunately, the plane was full of Venezuelans, and they were like, yeah, all these guys are just coming here to stay. So they like deported like not just him, a bunch of people. So like he couldn't play that year. So we tried it again the year after, and this time we're like, oh, we need a letter from EDC saying that. So we do the same thing, and we're only doing that because flying him from Venezuela to Mexico was like $1,000.
Right.
But flying him from Bogota to Mexico was 300. So we're like, yeah, you're getting on a bus, bro. You're crossing over. But he got to play at EDC, and it's super emotional. Like they gave him an amazing time slot on Saturday, and like he killed it.
That's amazing.
That being said, he got to Mexico like Sunday. Monday I get there. I'm like, all right, you ready for your EDC set? He's like, I got something to tell you. I'm like, what's that? It's like, I don't know how to use CDJs. I'm like, bro, your set is Saturday. You're playing in front of 30,000 people. You don't know how to use CDJs. And he's like, nah. But I could use a controller or whatever. I was like, nah, dog. No. So we had to rent CDJs. And he learned how to use CDJs that week so that he can play the set. I'm like, bro, just practice the set. That's all you need to do. Just practice the set.
And
like,
I'm sure he killed it.
Oh, he killed it. He killed it. Like I had a guy under him on standby in case he like pressed the wrong button so he could just like step up and but that's it. He killed it. He killed it. He did amazing. He was he was born for it, you know.
That's awesome. So what are you doing with the I have to say I love everything that Red Bull has done with this festival, the Estados Unidos De Bass festival this month. It's super dope, and I love how there's so many different, people involved, different talent, different sounds. What are you do? Because I know you're curating a lot of this final weekend of the festival going into it. So what are you what's your hand in this final weekend?
Well, I mean, the whole festival is kind of like a package deal. So like when Lily hit me up, the head of culture down here, she's like, yo, we're doing this thing last year. And I'm like, cool, so what's the concept? Well, the concept is to like show Latin global bass music and Latin urban music. I'm like, cool, so what do you want me to do? He's like, well, I need you to help me with the global bass side of things. I mean, at this point, like, crazy thing is last year we had GTA. I don't know if you heard of them. They were my students.
Oh wow! Okay.
At SAE, like we had a situation one time. Side story, where I'm working an album for Diplo, and I'm like, yo, like I'm in class, like as I'm teaching class, I'm like, yo, Diplo, I need the stems for this track, and he's like, all right, cool. Let me ask the guys from GTA to send them to you, and I'm in class. So then I'm like super distracted. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I look up and they're like kind of waiting for me. And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. I don't want to drop names, but I'm talking to Diplo. I need some stems and from this group called GTA. And he's just kind of setting it up to send them to me. And Matt from GTA goes, you want them now? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? It's like, I'm in GTA. Diplo just hit me up asking for the stems. I was just like, I just made him right now while you were distracted. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So I'm like, yo, Wes, what's the name of the guys from GTA? He's like, oh, it's Matt. And I'm like, bro. And the dude was sitting right there. So I'm like, hey, man, he's sitting in class with me right now. I just get him from him. And Wes was like, are you kidding me right now? He's with you right now in class? I'm like, yeah. And it turned into a thing. Like, he started making fun of them. He's like, why are you going to school? You guys are better than 90% of the people that's out there. Like, whatever. But whatever. So those relationships that I've been building for years now, since I started the label and all of that, and working with Matt Deason and all of that, kind of gave me the ability to, when Lily called, to like be like, well, I know exactly who needs to play. Like, I know exactly who would represent us in the global bass scene at an event like that, and we stacked it, and it was a huge success on both sides because we had two stages. We had the global bass stage and we had the urban stage running simultaneously, and both places were packed to the gills. So then Lily tells me, yo, Red Bull was really happy, we're gonna do it again. Back in January. At that time, we're like, oh, this is gonna be live.
At that point, it was before Corona. So like, obviously, at some point, you have to switch to what we're doing now.
Right. Like we're thinking, like, oh, last year we had this many people and we left this many people out. We gotta go to a bigger venue. We're already like, oh, it's gonna be amazing. And then obviously COVID hits, and then it started. First, it was canceled. Then it came back, and then it got canceled again, and then it evolved into this digital format. Yeah. and it's and you know and even then it evolved a few times. Like at one point we were gonna record them, and then no, it has to be live. So, but it's been great, man. Like we started out with Craze and Spider Tech, which have a group that they made back in the last Estados Unidos De Bass, because I brought Spider Tech to play. And Craze is like, they fell in love with each other. They're like, yo, like they complement each other's styles. And Craze is like, yo, Spider Tech is my favorite DJ in the world. Like for DJ Craze to say that, it's like, whoa. And they made a group called Mete Mano at the Estados Unidos De Bass last year. They released an EP, and I'm like, yo, I might as well have you guys play and open up the whole thing. So they played. Last week it was Happy Colors and G-Buck, which they've known each other forever, but they had never played together like a back-to-back, like on an open format like this, and they killed it. And this weekend we have Shake and Bass on the 18th, and we have Slow Mike from Chucky Town, which I worked with, and we've won Grammys together and all that. And so
I interviewed Goyo from Choki Town not too long ago.
She's amazing. She's
awesome.
She's like, I've stayed in their house. They made me food. Like one time I went to Bogota, and she's like, "Oh, you're here? Come to the crib." And I'm like, "All right." And I'm thinking like it's gonna be like, dude, they live in the hood like everybody else, like they like with the people. And it's like, "Oh, what do you want to eat?" Like super Colombian food. I'm like, "Yo, this is amazing." And we've worked for years now. And Slow is like an amazing producer, amazing DJ. And Sky is coming back again. Sky, everybody knows who Sky is at this point. If you don't know, you need to go listen to some Balvin stuff and figure it out, because he's amazing. So he's coming back. But Friday is really special, because there used to be a scene in Orlando spearheaded by Big Mac, who passed away a few years ago, like 4 years ago. And he had a party called Shake and Bass. And it was him and a crew of guys. Happy was in it, G-Buck was in it, Dr. Khan, Kiko, Males, and Ibar, and obviously Big Mac. And it was like every Sunday night, puro perreo, puro twerking in Orlando. So when he passed away, that kind of fell apart. Everybody kind of had to go figure out what they were going to do with their lives. So I thought, dude, wouldn't it be dope if we just get them all back together and like do another Shake and Bass? Yeah. And when I told them, they were like, heck yeah, let's do this thing. So they all got on board. So they're getting back together after 4 years of not doing that event. They're finally getting back together. Plus, we have special guests coming in, depending on the night. Like, Craze was somewhat part of that scene, and he said, like, he wanted to come back. G-Buck is going to come back. Happy is going to come back. So it's going to be, like, a massive back-to-back on Friday.
Nice. This is exciting. I'm excited, and we're running out of time here. But I want you to. How can people tune in real quick? How can people tune in to this weekend to watch all the festivities, all the amazing talent you mentioned? Calle Uchi's performing as well. How can people tune in?
Well, you could. We're on Mixcloud. Everything's being broadcasted through Mixcloud, but it's also being broadcasted through the Rebel website. You'll find it under the events. Nice. Either one will work. If you want to be part of the chat and just talk as much crap as you want, I recommend you go through the Mixcloud. You'll see it on front page. It's gonna be on Friday. Friday we're doing 9, and also LA is involved, so it's more than one city. It's 5 cities. So New York did their stint already last weekend. Texas already did their stint. The Bay Area also. So Miami and LA are going head to head this weekend. And in LA is where they have Calle Uchis, and they'll have Kinky and Tomás El Real playing over there. And we'll have our Shake and Bass and Slow and Sky to respond. So we kind of made it into a competition. Unofficially, we made it into a competition. But if you go on Mixcloud at those times, you'll find it there. We'll be live as always, live. Or the Rebel website on their events, you'll see it as well there.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day today to share with me all these amazing stories. It's been a pleasure, and I know a lot of producers who are watching this will definitely be inspired by everything that you have accomplished over the course of your career. Where can people follow you at? Let the people know where they can follow you at. Anything else you want to plug in right now? Now is the time to do it.
Well, they can find me at Frank El Medico or at La Clinica Rex. I'm either in one of those places. Frank El Medico altogether. Frank El Medico, boom, you'll find me there. I kept the branding pretty standard, man. If you look Frank El Medico, everything is Frank El Medico, Twitter, Twitch, everything.
Super easy to find you.
Super easy to find me, man. And La Clinica, the same thing. La Clinica Rex, you'll find it there. And Estados Unidos De Bass, just put the hashtag EEUU, because in Spanish, Estados Unidos is 2 E's to use.
People might forget that. People might
People
forget
might forget that.
Important. Very
It's
important.
important. It's EEU the base and hashtag that, and you'll find all the information about that. Or go to my Instagram, you'll find information about that as well. I've been posting about it the whole time.
I know. I was scrolling through. I was like, damn, this guy's got a lot of posts for this.
Hey man, we gotta support the movement. We want this to come back. We want to keep doing this. You know, we want this to become a big deal. Like the place to find new Latin, not just DJ and producers, but also urban talent. Like this is the goal.
Of course, man. Of course. And yo, thank you again for taking the time out of your day today. I appreciate, everything that you've done for the culture and everything that you're currently doing for the culture. Anything else you want to say? Anything to producers out there, real quick. We got 5 minutes left. Any quick little pieces of advice for producers watching this?
Well, I guess the biggest piece of advice is don't follow the money. Do it because you love it. Don't follow the money will come. If you do it because you love it, the money will come. And stick with what you're doing. Don't follow trends. Trends are good for I don't know, like for the moment. But if you set yourself up, you set up your sound, then you're gonna last longer than a moment. You could set up a trend that could last, that could have a real lasting effect. So don't follow trends and don't do this for the money. Do it because you love it, and the money will eventually come. Okay.
There you go. From Medico himself. Yo, thank you again. Make sure you go follow him. Go watch the Rebel Estados Unidos De Bass live stream this weekend. And until next time, it's Frank El Medico Rodriguez on the radar, baby.
Thank you, brother.